Hey, I'm here with Professor Oates from Tennessee State University, and I just want to start off by saying thank you, Dr. Oates, for allowing me to do this interview for my assignment today. And
You're very welcome.
I just want to start by saying, what is some general information about you and your background and your life growing up?
Well, I actually grew up in Prince George's County in Washington, D.C. area, the DMV area. I always was interested in nutrition. I always liked pets, people, and plants. And so, but I never knew much about a career in nutrition per se. I just was interested in it. And I know a lot of it had to do with my upbringing, my grandfather especially. He was always very much into naturopathic healing in medicine. So,
And what has been your career path?
okay. So, again, when I first went away to college, well, honestly, I hadn't even thought about going to college. My mother wanted me to go to college. Of course, that was the expectation from the family. But when I was in high school, I just wanted to graduate and get out of my parents' house. So, growing up in PG County at that time, they had what do you call it? Those programs where you can go to school half a day and then the next day you go to a trade school. So I was going to Central High School and I wanted to do the program starting in the 11th grade where I could go to Suitland and either do cosmetology or underwater welding. So those were my two choices of the things I was interested in because I've always enjoyed swimming and growing up in DC, hair is a big deal in the area. So that was my thought. But my mother refused to sign the paperwork. And so when she refused to sign the paperwork, I said, well, can I at least change high schools? Because I just was so apathetic about going to Central High School, to be honest. So I switched schools and I used my grandfather's address. At the time, we could do that. And his address, and we still have the house, thank God, is in Washington, D.C., 1882 Newton Street. And so, of course, that school is uh, was a district, or you would go to Cardoza High School. That's the school my mother went to high school. So I ended up changing schools, going to Cardoza High School. And being at Cardoza High School was the first time I'd had an African American science teacher, and she was a chemistry teacher, and she made everyone do science projects. Now at Central High School, you would hear about different people doing a science fair or whatever, but I was never encouraged to do a science fair. Well, this particular teacher, she made everybody do, you had to do a science fair. And so I was a runner up that first year for the Washington, D.C. Science Fair. The next year, I was actually the winner, the grand prize winner, my 12th year. And that was, I would say, it changed the trajectory of what I thought I wanted to do. And then it became, I was interested in college, and we had a great high school counselor at Cardoza High School, Dr. Nimhard, or Mr. Nimhard. And Mr. Nimhard, he helped everybody with getting their applications together. He provided vouchers for the programs that, the different ones, so you could apply for free to a lot of the universities. And I ended up applying to North Carolina Central University, which is an HBCU in North Carolina, Durham. And they actually gave me a full scholarship. And I had gotten some partial scholarships too, like Utica. I thought I wanted to maybe go to Utica, and I can't remember the other ones. And I think Cornell, I'd applied to Cornell, but they had a two-part. And I don't know why, but at the time I thought $50 was so much. Like the school had paid for the initial application, but with the second application, I thought it was so much. I didn't even ask my mother, for the $50. And then I got the award letter from North Carolina Central. And of course, there's a scripture that says, the Lord bless and add no sorrow. And so my mom was like, that's where you're going, because it was full scholarship. And so that's how I ended up. Now, when I first went to college, I was a biology major. I thought maybe I would want to do veterinary medicine because remember, I like people, pets, and plants. So I'm thinking I'll do maybe pre-vet and go to veterinary school. And that was what I thought I wanted to do. And I actually was still on that track when I fell into nutrition. Um, and with nutrition, it came about. So I got my undergraduate degree, and I'm still thinking about, well, what's going to make me competitive to get into a veterinary school. Now I'm in North Carolina, so I'm thinking about North Carolina State. Or I'm thinking about Tuskegee University. Those are the two schools I'm thinking. And so I go to a summer program at Tuskegee University, and I realized, oh, it's too hot in Alabama. Like it was really, really hot. And I decided that, well, maybe I'll just do it in North Carolina. And at this time, I had just gotten married. And so I didn't know it. We decided this is my college sweetheart. We're going to go on ahead and get married. And he was always interested in dental school, and that's what he wanted to do, dental medicine, or to become a dentist. And so I decided, yeah, I don't want to go to Alabama. I'll just try to get into North Carolina Central. Well, I found out about a program that would pay for me to get my master's at Central, and then I could go to UNC Chapel Hill and earn my doctoral degree. So I got in that program. But again, I'm thinking about, well, I'll just do this. They'll pay for the classes and then I'll go to vet school. But the experience, I can say, at Alabama, at Tuskegee, it also let me know that, because, even though it was hot, if I really wanted to do veterinary medicine, that wouldn't have stopped me, right? Like I would go anywhere. So I really did start, um, I don't want to say thinking, maybe that's not the way I really want to go, but I was dealing with, it was a hands-on experience, which is great. And it really just made me start thinking like, I don't, I didn't, well, so in the meantime, so now I'm in a master's program. I'm still taking some chemistry classes because I want to improve my GPA. Um, and well, actually, with the chemistry classes, it was more, as a biology major, I had taken so many chemistry classes, it was really like having a minor. That if I, and since I was still at North Carolina Central University doing my master's, if I did a few more classes, I could earn a bachelor's in chemistry as well. So I was doing both. My advisor was not pleased. Like, and he was like, "Why are you taking chemistry classes? You don't need to do that." And so I didn't one semester, and then it was like literally the Lord told me again, "You need to do those classes," and so I did. And so when I ended up graduating, well, I had to drop that advisor. I ended up dropping it, but it was all good. Like you got to do what you got to do. So my advice to students is always, you have to know this is your career. Even being in school, this is your career preparation, but it is your career and it is your life. And so you have to take control. If you were in the workforce and you don't like your boss, there's things that you do, not just report a person, but you decide, well, let me find another job. And so if you have an advisor, or you're working with someone and it's not working out, like my issue with my advisor at the time, who he happened to be the person who told me about the program. I liked him. I didn't have an issue, but I was doing my master's in biology, and the electron microscope was broken. So a lot of the stuff that I needed to do, I couldn't do. And so I was just kind of like in a holding pattern. And I realized that I needed to take charge. And it's not so much that I was really interested in it. It was really, I was just following kind of what he wanted me to do because that was his research. It was his area of expertise, not something that I was necessarily passionate about. And so what I ended up doing was I found a job that was, it was still science related, and it was working at Duke University with a guy who, he was interested in asthma and dust allergens, like dust and cockroach allergens. And so I got a job working with him, and I asked him, could I use a piece of what I was doing for my master's? So I ended up having like an academic advisor, and then I had a research advisor as well. And I had to go and get it approved, but um, sometimes when you make those decisions, people don't aren't really happy with it. So my original academic advisor, he did get upset with me because I decided to change what I was doing, and I had to find another academic advisor. And then there are sometimes politics. on campuses that I had to work through, or that they worked through. I mean, I'm a student, so what do I really have to say other than I just went around asking? I asked this one guy who was my advisor when I was in the undergrad in terms of academic if he would advise me, and he was a little hesitant, but he did, and I appreciated it. And so I essentially I ended up with like three advisors, which it's okay, but I got through it, and I'm glad I did that because it allowed me to go ahead and finish my master's, and I was able to finish the chemistry degree. So when I graduated, I had another bachelor's in chemistry, my master's degree, and it's what's so interesting is so you have this idea of anticipation of when you're going to graduate, so you're applying to other programs as well, right? Like, so if you where you are now as an undergraduate student, before you graduate, you need to think about what graduate program you may want to do if you're interested in continuing your education. So, with the program, I knew when I finished, or at least I thought when I finished my bachelor's degree and my master's degree, I would go into the PhD program for biology at UNC Chapel Hill. Because remember, I told you it's a bridge, they call them a bridge program. And so, I had been accepted into the bridge program, but because I had a delay in collecting data and getting everything done, I was actually delayed a semester. So instead of starting in the fall, I would need to start that January. So I have a December graduation with my master's, right? But it should have been a spring. Well, although I had been accepted, I then get a letter from UNC Chapel Hill biology department telling me that since I had not graduated when I first, was at the anticipated date, in order to be accepted into their graduate program, biology program, I would need to take a class. It was going to now become contingent upon me passing one graduate level course that fall semester while I was finishing up my master's thesis and while I was taking physical chemistry too, I believe it was, but my last class in chemistry. So I'm going to tell you, I sat down and I thought about that thing and I said, I'd rather have knowing what I could do, right? Finish my thesis, take that one class. Physical chemistry is not an easy class. So I'm thinking I can concentrate on those two things, finishing up the writing for my thesis and the data analysis and all of that. And this one chemistry class, I don't have to have a PhD, right? Like I just need to let me finish because, like now I mentioned, I'd already gotten married at that point, and I'd already had my first child. So I'm thinking, actually, at this point, I had had my second child. So I'm thinking a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, right? I know what I could do in this idea, honestly, of feeling as if, oh, you're not like, you don't believe I can do the work. I don't have anything to prove, right? But I do know I need to finish. You understand? Like that's been my biggest thing. Don't let ego get in the way of anything. And that is another lesson that I've learned. So if you need help, you need anything, I'm here at Tennessee State University, and I remember I had a student from Memphis the first year I was teaching, and students from Memphis because of their accent. I love it. And so I was asking the class something, and I found out a student had done something, and I said, well, why didn't you let me know? And I hear this voice, and it says, yeah, closed mouth don't get fed, and so that's been you got to let people know. So I say that this fast forward. So I graduate from North Carolina Central. And at the time, now mind you, I'm just happy to graduate. I had already decided, like, I'm not taking that class. And I had gone, I think, to the first class. And then that's when I decided I'm not driving over here. Parking was a mess, trying to find a place to park and get to class. I just felt like that was going to take too much out of my time to try to do for something that for me to prove to you, like, why did you accept me before? Why now all of a sudden it's a contingency? I said contingency, contingency. I don't need it. I wasn't impressed. Like, I don't have to do it. But I do know one thing, I'm gonna get this master's, especially when the program extended my semester. Like they understood my circumstances in terms of the microscope being down, having to change advisors, and doing this. And I did all of this. Another lesson learned was do not take no for an answer. My advisor, my primary advisor, the first person who I was working with who told me about the program, I asked him after we used to have to do seminars when, sometimes when you're in these programs, they put on like lunch and learns or different things. People come in and give presentations. So this woman, Dr. Lacey, had come in and she was a dean at UNC Chapel Hill. And I can't remember what area, but I want to say she was in the School of Public Health. But I cannot remember what her official title was. But she was associate dean or assistant dean. And she gave a lecture that day that talked about kind of like a workshop, but she talked about taking control over your career. And I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, I'm supposed to graduate in the spring. It's February. It was like February 21st or February 22nd. And I don't have any data collected. And everything she was saying, it started hitting me. So I had already started looking at jobs. You know how you do, because it's like you thinking they're going to put me out this program. I don't have my data. I don't have anything. And so when based on everything she said after that meeting, I went and talked to her and I asked her, I said, so is it okay if I'm having these issues? Is it okay if I were to get a job? Now I didn't mention anything. I just said, if is it possible to get a job? She said, yeah, as long as you're not working at McDonald's. As you can get a job as long as it aligns with what you're doing. I said, okay. Now I hadn't actually applied, or maybe I had, but I had just saw this lab job working, like again, like I said, at Duke University with a professor of immunology, and he was working with looking at uh, dust and roach allergens, right, and how they can exacerbate a person's asthma, because that's what he was. So he was a physician who did research. I'm going to tell you, best guy in the world. He was from Alabama. I never forget. And that's the other thing. You never know who's going to be an ally. It doesn't matter what race they are. Because some of your best allies, some of your biggest enemies might be the people who you least expect, right? And so I just remember I kept calling. I said, "Hey, have you made a decision?" And I was so he said this to me. He said, "I never understood why you were so excited about cockroaches and dust." But I was like, this, it just felt right to me that this would be something that I would like to do. And so from that experience, though, I had to go into the homes of people who had enrolled in his research project and collect like dust samples. I would vacuum literally, and I would put down roach traps. And they were people who lived in like multi-family homes, but they were like uh, what do you call duplexes, right? So those there were people who had duplexes or apartments. And I went in and I loved talking to them and explaining to them where the best places, like the patterns of roaches. And so if you want to trap roaches and you want to get rid of them, how you can do that. I enjoyed that. And that's when I realized too, I really don't want to do biology, right? Because that would mean I'm stuck in a lab. And so, but I'm just again happy that I'm going to finish up my master's degree. I get to graduation and I'm just happy. And now I'm pregnant with my third child. And I'm sitting there thinking about, oh, I'm so happy, and I don't know what I'm gonna do, but my this child is due in February, and so it's going to be a full circle from when I first started. Like, oh, I got to make a change. Something got to happen. Do something proactive. To now, I'm finishing up. It's December. I'm gonna have a baby in a couple of months. I'm good. I'm so happy. And the person who was actually giving the commencement speech was Bishop Eddie Long. And literally, as I'm hearing this mess, I'm in my head, I'm all thanking Jesus and hallelujah. He's saying, I hear somebody say, somebody out there, they think this is it. And I hear the Lord saying, this isn't it. But he's trying to put you in something. You got to keep going. And it was like, oh man. And I knew it was the Lord telling me, no, remember, they're going to pay for you to get your doctorate. This isn't it. So I went when I got home that day after celebrating with family and all. I went and I looked at all the programs because they were like 16, 12 to 16 things that you could do in terms of pass for a PhD. So biology was one, immunology was one, epidemiology, and what else? Nutrition. So I'm looking at this list and I'm like, man, I've always been interested in nutrition. And I was debating because I just done my master's work in immunology, but I said, nah, nutrition. And that's how I ended up getting my doctorate in nutrition. You know, yeah. I just said a lot. I'm sorry for practice, but we good. I'm warmed up.
Okay, I can keep that whole part, and if you want.
Okay, yeah, we can just flow. Yeah, if you're recording, we can keep flowing.
Okay. I really enjoyed hearing your background and your career path of how you got to the point where you're at today. And I like how it all comes together to relate back to the human sciences and family consumer science. I just wanted to ask, what's the key underlining factor or focus on how you decided to get to the point where you're at today, or the career choice?
So it goes back to my husband. He supported me in terms of what I was working on and being in school. He really wanted to be a dentist, and he really wanted to go to Meharry. And so now it was his turn, so to speak. So he applied to Meharry. And what's interesting is, so I'm looking around, well, what's in Nashville? And I know this is the thing, we can think that things happen by chance or whatever, but I really do believe in divine orders. And so I looked, there was a job opening at Tennessee State University in nutrition. And so I said, okay. And I applied. And it's interesting because the year I applied, he he got into a summer program. So it wasn't necessarily into like the dental school, but again, like a bridge kind of thing they want to see. So he came and he did that. Um, and it just the timing is all I can say. The timing of everything. It really worked out. So the first year he had applied, like I said, he didn't get in. And he didn't do and it wasn't the summer program either. He just didn't get in, but he applied again. Like I think he took the DAT again and he applied again. Well, I go back and I look again. The same job is offered again, right now, and I'm saying, okay. So I'm trying to get in, but apparently because I had applied before, I had to call HR and all this other stuff. But they reopened the thing so I could put my application back in because the first time I guess they figured um, I wasn't interested, that I would never be interested in again. It just wasn't the timing. That's the idea of timing. But the job, I feel like I really believe God held that job for me. Right? He held it, and so that's how I ended up here. Now, how I became interim chair was because people voted me in. So we had the faculty to vote, and I won. I won the vote, and I did this other thing too. Sometimes leadership you can be reluctant. When I first started, I didn't necessarily want to do this. Um, I had my mind like blinders on. This is what I'm going to focus on, and this is what I'm going to do. And I come from when my school and my background is from a school of public health. When I got my doctorate, when I decided to become a registered dietitian, I ended up back at North Carolina Central University, which is where I was doing my postdoctoral research. And I found out they had a dietetic program. While I was there, I ended up what was it, a program evaluation of their didactic and their dietetic internship program while I was taking courses so that I could get the verification form to get into the internship form. So it was great for me in terms of helping understand what it looks like as for most undergraduate students, at least the process before, and we're hoping that it's going to change a little bit. It's a very complicated way and a very narrow funnel for people to become registered dietitians, right? At least previously. So while I'm doing this, I now I get a background in the sense of human sciences. So I would say that's when it really came together in terms of all that human sciences or family and consumer sciences, human ecology, whatever name you want to use, what we do. Um, and so I think that helps, like having the public health. But human sciences is different because we focus on families, well, individuals and families and communities. Public health is mostly community and public realm, right? This idea of how can you help a mass of people in communicable diseases and things like that. So um, closely aligned, but different as well. But I think we both focus on improving the quality of people's lives, just at different levels.
And what does it mean to be an African American in your current position?
You know, that's interesting. I guess for me, oh, I knew this was coming, right? But this is one of those that is really challenging for because my lens are focused on helping all of my students, right? Like I want all of the students who come through our doors to succeed. Now, I'm at a historically black university, so most of our students are either African American or they come from a disadvantaged background. And so, what I have found is that, especially in rural areas, so as I'm in Tennessee, um, I want to make it a place where they can understand just like I had to see it for myself and I had to learn it for myself, that they can do it regardless of what society says and the norms of society. Growing up is just different. Like I never really understood the term minority because growing up in Washington, D.C., I didn't feel like a minority, right? And I think even like my household and how we were brought up or how I was raised, I never felt like a minority. It wasn't until I went away to school to North Carolina Central in the South that I realized what that meant in terms of um, not seeing as many people as who look like me or my family or and one thing that I love about African Americans, we come in all shades, right? So that's just who we are. And I think in having had friends who and even family members um, who look different or different melanin and all, some who probably could pass for white if they wanted to, it doesn't bother me. Like I don't know if it's because of where I was raised, this issue of my skin color. I never had a problem with it. Like so, being African until I got to a space where now people do treat you differently, right? And you can really see it and you can feel it, and that is so now it's very important that when I see something that is um, unfair and biased, I, I I just it's hard for me to keep silent. And I've always been outspoken, even without. I've never liked feeling like as if people were treated unfairly, whether it was me or anybody else, right? Like so, I've always been the person who, if somebody's getting bullied, I go for the underdog. That's just like who I am. So, yeah. So I guess as African American, it means you have to help those who look like you. And when I say help, not giving anything, but making them understand, like you don't. When I get work from students, and if it's not up to par, no, you're not turning that in. You're gonna have to redo this, right? And for me, it's that again that sense of what I got when I got to Cardozo High School, inner city high school, where most of my teachers were African American. I remember I had an English teacher. I think both of them were English teachers. One was white. The guy, he actually was the tennis coach, Dr. Mahari. What was it? No, not Mahari. It was something. It was a Mac something. It was like an Irish name. And I really liked him. He was a good guy. And I forgot my English teacher's name, but she was good. I remember we had to read Canterbury Tales, like in that class, thinking about high school. But I also remember all the other teachers I had. Like, so I had a Mr. Glee who made us recite four score and 20 years ago with the preamble. We had to recite and learn and recite Invictus Out of the Night, which covers me. Right. So these strong figures in my life who instilled in me that I'm just as good as everybody else. Like I'm no better and nobody's better than me and nobody's less than me. And that's how you treat. My mother always said that's how you treat people, right? Like nobody's better than you and you're not better than anybody else. Everybody, you respect people. So yeah, I think that's what it means to me. It's not so much it's standing up for the rights of African Americans. That's what it means to me. But I want to say, I think I stand up for rights for everybody, anybody who's been underserved and mistreated. So I just don't think it's right.
I really like that, and how your values, it comes back to the community for full circle, where you get the values and then you instill it into others. And I just wanted to ask, what contributions have you made as a professional to your community?
Well, that's hard. It's hard, I think, because it's hard for me to think in terms of um, what, like, this idea of patting yourself on the back kind of thing, and letting your work speak for itself. So when I think, what have I done? A lot of diabetes education. This is one of the main things I think. One of my biggest proponents is definitely for preventing diabetes and diabetes education for those who've been diagnosed as having issues with maintaining their blood glucose levels. And so that's one of the biggest things I would say. The other thing is looking at how do we eat. Um, Nutrition is my biggest thing. I like to tell people, so nutrition is my mission, right? So no matter what, I'm always trying to talk to people about what we should be eating. And I'm always trying to improve my diet. So it's not like it's kind of you preaching to the choir kind of thing. So I'm preaching to myself, like the mess when they tell you the pastor on stage, but a lot oftentimes is what God is dealing with them on as well. So yeah, it hits home a lot. And it is because of cultural background, right? So growing up, there's so many things now that I don't eat that I ate as a child because that's what my parents ate and that's what their parents ate. And seeing how, for me, I would say diabetes. So my mom had diabetes, her father had diabetes, my great uncles, so my grandfather's brothers had diabetes, my mom's first cousin had, like, I can name so many people in my family who had or have diabetes. And so when I knowing this, and it's not just me, but this is something that affects African Americans. Think about hypertension. So on my dad's side, my father's sister had diabetes. Um, but his side is mostly like, so even hypertension, right? And this idea of high blood pressure. And for me, I know just being black, right? There's certain stress hormones that come up when I see a police officer. I haven't done anything but a cop car behind me and the lights and the sirens and the different things. So there's just stress being African American in this country. And so knowing, well, what can we do diet wise? I can do all that I possibly know, and I still might get diabetes, right? But my thing is, it's still this idea for me, but at least I can do all I can. Because I think that's the key. There's some scriptures that come to one is my people perish for lack of knowledge. And I've always felt like that is you gotta give people the information, right? Behavior change is more than just having the education though. We have to do more and we can't just blame the people, oh well, they know. But there's so many other factors. And that's what I love about I would say consumer sciences, family consumer science, and looking at hierarchy and needs and how behavior intentions and trans theoretical models and behavior frameworks, how these things work to help with intervention. So everything that I try to do in terms of research grants that I've written, whether they've been funded or not, has always been centered around how do we help people to improve their lives. So when the latest thing, when COVID hit, a lot of funding for COVID. And see, that can be the opening because although they were talking about, in some of the funding I got, COVID revealed that a lot of adults don't get immunized. We focus on children, right? You got to have your immunizations so you can go to school and different things, but they don't. People don't think about immunization in terms of health for adults, and so that was the whole issue. If we had kept it as immunizations as a part of this is something that we do to keep healthy. Yeah, you hear, oh, get your flu shot, but we really put them in categories. Oh, when you get older, then it's important, right? And some people who working in health are like, we categorize who should be getting in different stuff, and that is true depending on your risk level. But I think it's like colon cancer. So I used to do, and I still am interested in cancer prevention, which is why food, right? See, everybody eats food. And we know that food is one of those things that links to so many things, right? So we know cancer, at least 30%, probably more, but conservatively, at least 30% of all cancers can be related to diet, conservatively. Um, then we talk about obesity, we talk about diabetes, hypertension. There's so many things because we're battling against a system of consumerism, which is why I like family and consumer sciences, right? So we talk about what consumer education, right, on that level. So everybody's it's all about making money, unfortunately. And I decided a long time ago that that wasn't going to be my focus. It couldn't be. It was going to be my focus was going to be how can you help people, and that is what I want to do in terms of nutrition. Again, I go back to my grandfather and things that he would tell me, and we always ate wheat bread. Like white bread, we're not getting no white bread. I, I, I got white bread when I went to school. You know what I mean? When they had we just never did white bread. So, but for some people, when I would talk to them about eating wheat bread, it's like wheat bread. Don't nobody want no wheat bread. It's so it again the culture and understanding what people are used to and how do you introduce foods to people and not pressuring people because again I believe in autonomy. I believe this is your life. You have to make decisions, right? So if God can be so omnipotent and still yet so gentle enough to say, choose you this day, who am I to make people, you just give people the information and you show them and then they make a decision. And I think that's how we all want to live. We are independent, free will creatures. And I think we need to always respect that about people. So I'm not trying to do anything to give up my freedom. I tell people all the time, two places I don't want to go, hell and jail. Don't want to go. So,
Yeah, I just want to pivot back to the African American aspect in your profession. How does your HBCU or experience at HBCU have an impact on students in their career field? And has the experience been rewarding for you?
it has. So for me, again, it's this wanting students to be prepared for when they leave the institution, when they leave, they've left home. And I feel like this is the new launching pad, right? To get them prepared for when they go out into the field and into their career. I want them to enjoy themselves, but remember while they're here, they are here for an education. And so school must come first. I have students all the time. I mean, this is the practice ground for balancing your life and making those behaviors of and choices for what's going to be your future self. And so always reminding people you're where you are as a result of your choices. So thinking strategically, where do you want to be in the future? Now, some things you can't control. I mean, COVID, nobody could control that. Man, I thought I was going to take students to Brazil and study and do, and it, so you can only control so much, right? But at least having a plan. And so again, it goes, I wanted to, it's going to be full of them, but write the vision, right? This is the whole idea. You need to write it. It's something powerful in that. Write the vision. So, and I believe that we can have the desires of our heart if they align with good things, right? Uh, yeah. So I think what I try to do is give them an experience. I'm like a auntie to some. I'm like a mama to others, and some I'm just that mean old Professor Oates. She needs to go find another job. I say that because you get student comments, and my son said, "Oh, Mama, you need to read this." It was I don't know what they call them. Rate My Professor. I think that was the name of it or something like that. And I read one and I just laughed. I just laughed. So my hardworking students tend to love me, right? The ones who rise to the challenge. Those who just think I'm gonna give them a grade, I'm not necessarily their favorite. But I tell you what, I've had several students who, after they go out and they come back and they talk to me, they appreciate me much more, right? It's kind of like that. Oh, Dr. O's, if I had listened to you, you were so right, da da da, that kind of thing. Some still might be a little salty, but I'm okay. As long as I do the same. For me, it's about treating everybody the same, right? I don't want to do for one that I can't do for. Now, I do understand different circumstances, though. So I will say on a case by case basis, you have to make some decisions. But I explain to students early on when the class starts, I say, listen, when it gets to the end of the semester and I think about how hard as a class people have worked, and I'm especially a student, if I know a student work hard and if I'm going to give them 3 extra points just because they worked hard and did stuff, I'll give everybody like to curve, you know what I'm saying? Everybody will get the 3 points. It's not I'm going to do. But if I had that one person, and then I'm looking at this other person who just, they, if I get them through, I said I got to be fair though, and that's how I make my decisions. So I'm not going to do something if I can't do for all. Yeah.
I really like how you make it not tough, but give students a challenge in their life so they can develop and grow as a person and as a professional. And I just want to ask, what challenges have you faced in your professional life, and how you overcome them?
Okay. So I'm going to tell you, there are challenges associated with being an African American woman in academia. So one of the blessings I would say is that I'm at a university where we actually have a female president. And so that has been very inspiring and empowering. And not only um, is she, so she's also, I'm in the same sorority, she was my bachelor. It's like, I'm just so, having a mentor, I guess that's the way, right? So having somebody mentor me as well, like I think in terms of getting into this space, there's still challenges, but seeing someone who has done it, is doing it, right, and will continue, that is inspiring. So it's this idea of thinking about all the strong women that I know and knew. Like, so my mom, my aunties, just different people who, and in the African American community, even if it's a cousin, we call them an auntie if they're a certain age, right? So, this idea of the people who, what they've put in me, my grandfather, and my grandfather's been dead a very, very long time, both of my grandfathers, and just this idea of, but the things that they've taught me, like this wisdom, this knowing who you are, and even in times when things um, get rough, as they say, and aren't fair and aren't necessarily equitable. It is a matter of knowing, well, what are you in for? Like, what is your reward? So for me, the reward isn't necessarily. hearing somebody say, "Oh, well done," and the accolade, right? Like, so my promise is something greater, right? What I'm trying to achieve is something greater. But I think that for me, having mentors is very important. Having somebody, having encouragers, whether they're peer mentors, a coach, right? Like, so you need a coach in your life, and having that, and then having someone that you admire. And what I really like here is that there are other African American women that I interact with, not necessarily in my college, but across campus, and as well as having the support of other African American women in my department is important. Having the support of peers at other colleges, universities, being in different organizations. And I was saying some of them aren't necessarily African American, but just knowing that you've made, uh, you know, good people, right? So yeah, but it is something when you have other, because unless you're African American, you really don't understand what it's like to be African American. No, and I think that's the thing. You can sympathize. Like honestly, I read a book, bury my head at wounded knee. Right, it's the story of Native Americans telling their story, basically, of how they were lied to over and over again. And and I think about things that people used to say, Indian giver. No, it wasn't the Indians. It was the white folk that kept saying you gonna do they, and then they lie. You know what I mean? Like, what you call it, the booby traps, or when people tell you something and you think you in safety, and then they come and attack you by surprise. They did all kinds of stuff, murder, rape, all kinds. And it's like, so, but I still, even as much empathy as I have, I can't. We were, for me, we were stolen from Africa, right, and brought here. But can you imagine being forced to live your land now? Now you're forced to live in an area that they're calling it reservations, like even that name. You know what I'm saying? So, but how can I? And so my grandfather was he had Cherokee, and so this, but still, how, for me, as I'm African American. That's how I identify. But having, I can still have that empathy, but I could never really know unless I wasn't. You understand what I'm saying? Like, and that's the crux of it, and the pain of it. I would say is like when I have that empathy, um, but again, only a Native American can truly say what it feels like to live in that kind of space, right? So these are still lenses of brown and black people, and some Native Americans, they may look white, right? Like African Americans, some of us look white, but we know, and then we deal, and I believe it's the same with Native Americans. You have colorism that occurs, right? So, and again, these are things that have been put upon us as through colonization, right? This idea of oppression and Jim Crow and different things. So it's hard as an African American to keep going sometimes, but you got to realize it's greater than who we are. Like this mission, this call, and I really believe that you know what we're doing now is going to determine where we spend eternity. So we got to be like, what I love about who we are. And when I say that, this space of brown people, and I'm thinking Native Americans, African Americans, because of our close alignment in terms of treatment and history, right? Even I would say some Asian Pacific and Islanders, and like Samoan, different. This idea of we we embrace people, like we, I don't know. There's a script. There's a saying I'm talking about. Conquering hearts can hold no love. Right. So when you have people who want to dominate and control, you got to recognize. And this is regardless of skin color. They can't hold love in their heart. It's hard for them to understand love and the concept of love because they just want to dominate and control and own and possess, right? And oppress because they feel threatened that if you get something they can't. I don't understand it, and I don't want to understand it because it's a form of selfishness and greed, and I think that's the biggest thing that I have to I want to instill with students and the people I come in contact with is that it really is about relationships and how we treat each other. That's what it's really about, respect and how we treat each other. So
Yeah,
I hope that answered. I don't know. I feel like I might.
that was great. That was great. Oh, I also believe that we should know about our upbringing and of the African American community and Native Americans. And I just wanted to ask, what do you see for the future of minorities or people of color in our profession?
I think it is truly like before. We've done it before, but this time when we do it, we got to stick to it and mean it, right? Coming together, coming together and honestly working together to right the health inequities, to make this country. They talk about make it great again. No, to make it great. We in order to make the country great, because we don't want to go back again. No, but we need to, and we can do it. We can make the country great. But that's what we need to do. And historically, when I look at stuff, we have to always realize that whenever there's a gain for our rights, there's this backlash, the white backlash that we receive, and we cannot cringe backwards. We gotta move forward. We gotta keep moving forward, and understand. Yeah, the backlash is going to come, but we gotta move forward. And I think that's the key. We got to come together and we got to work together. And it's not going to be about oppressing or one better than the other. It's just who's best for the job. I think that's the biggest thing for me as an African American woman in a leadership position. It is looking at qualifications and, again, dealing in predominantly male spaces as well. So I don't know about your university, but in our university, the Department of Human Sciences is a mostly women, mostly female. We're in a College of Agriculture, so the other department they're mostly male, right? And trying to fight to have a voice to be treated equally. Even the fact, like the vote that I told you about, having being able to vote for our department chair. Initially, they wanted to just appoint someone, and that's when I was asked, you know, um, well, am I going to run or whatever? I'd like to speak up about it. And I did. And this was years before I became interim. But I made a point of, I don't understand how the other department gets to vote on who they want to serve as their department chair. And we're just told this is who's going to do it. That's not fair. Right. Now, that time I wasn't voting for myself, like I didn't want to do it. I just knew that wasn't right. You understand what I'm saying? Like I didn't know years later it would be me being voted in. But just at the time, I just when the person who hired me was retiring, I said, no, we don't want that. It was an issue with the person. Now, if everybody liked the person, we probably would have been like, oh, okay, you know what I'm saying? But it was the issue of that's not right for you to have to tell us this is the person, whereas everybody else got to vote. So yeah, needless to say, that person didn't like me because I stopped.
Yeah.
I stopped it. Yeah, but she didn't need to be department chair, and I think that's the thing. Really looking at qualifications, right? You got to look at not because somebody's been here so long or somebody. No, you got to look at qualifications.
And what advice would you give to a young college graduate entering the human sciences field?
Do your thing, right? Find your passion, and that's what you follow your passion. Get along with everybody, right? Because you can go fast by yourself, but if you want to go far, you go with others. And I think that's the key for me. It's always been. Now, I'm not saying that let me say this, there is safety in counsel, right? There's a safety in multitude of counsel. So I'll throw stuff off people who I feel can provide valuable feedback and critique. I share things, you can't share things with everybody, but you'll know intuitively, you know who you can talk to and who you can share things with. And I'll get advice. And I believe, again, it's a good thing to hear other people's perspectives. Doesn't necessarily mean it's what you're going to do or follow, because you got to be true to yourself. Like, for example, the my professor, he thought, oh, taking that class to prepare before, like while I'm finishing my thesis and all that contingency class, that would be a good thing for me. It didn't sit right with my. That's why I told you I went to one class that first day and parking and all. That didn't sit well with me. It didn't feel good to me. So you got to be true to yourself in terms of what it is you want to do and how you want to do it. Maya Angelou said that thing about um, liking yourself, and I might be misquoting, but something about liking yourself is liking what you do and how you do it. You know what I'm saying? It's not, but it's also how you do it. So you gotta have that confidence. And the the other thing I would say is read. Nothing builds confidence like reading, because although people might say something to you, if you read, you find the truth. So, for example, and this going back to when the person in front of me, who Dr. Lacey, she was telling us taking control of your career, da da da. And then I went and I talked to her and I got her information. Well, then I went and talked to the dean of the graduate school and got his information and said, hey, I talked to Dr. Lacey and she said I could get a job on this, and I just want to make sure with you if is it okay this, like, by this time I'm thinking about a whole bunch of stuff. So I'm gathering information before I go back and talk to my advisor. And so I'm talking to him and he's telling me stuff and I'm like, well, that's not what Dr. So and so said. Now I know it may not be like people talk about chain of command and different things, but I will say this to students: if you hear a no, that might just be that one person telling you no. It may not be for real. So that's why I read policies. Talk to people, find out. Sometimes there are always ways to have some. I don't want to say again. Sometimes things change, and the person you're talking to, they may not know that the rules have changed because they just haven't gotten that information yet. Sometimes there are breakdowns in communications, or people interpret things differently. So I'm just saying, don't let a no stop you. Sometimes nobody likes a no, because no is like a form of rejection. But don't let a no stop you. Just KNOW, know that a no means, all right, I gotta go back to the drawing board, right? Like, what if Edison would have stopped when he was trying to develop the light bulb? And remember, he didn't do it alone. It was a team of people that he had working. One of them, who was very instrumental with the filament, is African American, right? So this idea of we're there, we're everywhere, and we make great contributions to science, and to the world. Period. So yeah, this is who we are.
Any additional information or advice for a young professional, a person
Um,
of color, or career updates?
yeah, just always be positive and always think about, in terms of, don't think selfishly. Is this helping people? Is what I'm doing, is it going to help people? What is the benefit? I think that's the whole purpose of human sciences or family consumer sciences, is that we improve the lives, the quality of lives, but don't do it at the detriment of your own quality of life. So while I tell people different things, I'm still trying to make sure I get enough rest, get enough water, take care of myself. Physical activity, just take care of yourself, um, and know who you are. There's a song I would encourage people to listen to. It's called Black Gold by Esperanza and Spalding, I think is her name. But it's Black Gold. You got to know who you are.
Well, Professor Oates, I would like to say thank you for letting me do this interview with you and doing completing this assignment for my class, and I greatly appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for allowing me to share.